Hello, everyone. My name is Dave Jochum. I'm the Director of Business and Membership Development for the Longview Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to today's webinar on managing stress in the workplace. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a couple of housekeeping items. First, this webinar is being recorded and will be made available online at longviewchamber.com. For those of you on the line currently, as we're doing this live, you will receive an email later today with a link to listen to the broadcast again and to share with others if you'd like. You'll also receive with that email a copy of the PDF presentation. A couple of features to make you aware of if you haven't used GoToWebinar before. You'll be muted through the presentation. You'll be able to listen to the presenters and see their presentation. If you don't see the title screen right now, it's a green and white title screen slide. If you don't see that, then you may need to click on the GoToWebinar icon. Generally on your toolbar at the bottom, there's a little flower symbol kind of a thing. So click on that, and you should be able to see. And even though you are muted through the webinar, it is interactive. And so there's a questions section, should be on the right-hand side of your screen. You can type into that feature any questions that you want to ask the presenters throughout the presentation. We'll go through those when their presentation is concluded and answer as many of those as we can. That question section also allows you to send a message for the organizer, making them aware of any issues that you're having with the broadcast. You can let us know about that. So the Longview Chamber of Commerce is thinking of you and your business during this difficult time. And we recognize that this has been a painful season for us, lots of changes and lots of things to try to keep up with from a business perspective. And we know that our business community is looking for direction on a daily basis. And so even though we don't ourselves have all of the answers, we do have access to some great folks, some experts in specific areas that can provide you with a place to start. And today, our professionals are from Community Healthcore, who are the mental health authority for much of our East Texas region. We have Rachel Harrington and Shawn Walter with us today to discuss ways to identify and manage stress in the workplace for you and your employees. And my goodness, what a timely topic that is for us today. So I'm going to turn this over now to Shawn and Rachel. Thank you guys for being here.
Yeah, thank you guys for having us. Like Dave mentioned, I'm Shawn. I'm our Takumi program manager here at Community Healthcore. Just so y'all know, Takumi is a grant that we get that we work with people on probation and parole. And then we have Rachel with us as well.
Good morning. I'm the adult program outpatient manager here at Community Healthcore.
Yeah, so we're just invited to share a little bit about kind of stress in the workplace. And we wanted to talk through kind of identifying what that is, and then talk a little bit about what that looks like, especially in our current state of affairs with everything going on with COVID-19. Let's see. Okay, wonderful. We got the controls over here. So we wanted to start to talk about that stress is not always necessarily negative. There are positive and negative types of stress. So I don't know that anyone exists that has a totally stress-free life. We all experience that in one way or the other. Some of those stresses can be helpful, and some of them, which we'll be focusing on today, can be negative or difficult for us. So the good and bad types of stress are called eustress and distress. We're probably more familiar with the second one. But to talk about eustress, this is the kind of positive stress we experience in our lives at work, at home, that helps motivate us, helps us focus. It's typically short-term and can kind of kick us into action. It can almost feel exciting and can even improve our performance during those limited amounts of time.
So this would be like if you had a project coming up and you had a time limit on it, and you experience stress that, oh, I got to get it done, or maybe you're cramming for a test if you're in college, helps you focus more. Eustress are the kind of things that help us.
Similar to how, we prepared for this presentation. The timeline, of course, made us stressed and motivated to get it done. So de-stress, of course, and this is, again, what we're going to focus on more today, is the kind of stress that can create unnecessary anxiety, can sometimes contribute to depression, it's almost a crippling type of stress where instead of it motivating us to get stuff done, it can actually overwhelm us, decrease our performance, and over long term can even lead to mental and physical health problems. The other thing we wanted to kind of identify and talk about is the difference in normal anxiety and actually clinical diagnosable anxiety, also known as generalized anxiety disorder. Like I mentioned before, we all experience stress and anxiety. The biggest keys that we kind of look at are severity, the appropriateness, and the intensity.
It sounds like possibly we have lost audio on our presenters. Shawn, are you still there? If you can hear me, Shawn, we cannot hear you. There we go. I hear somebody now.
Okay, can y'all hear us now?
Yes.
Okay.
So that was an example of normal anxiety and stress that occurs in the workplace.
You guys planned that. You planned that. You created anxiety in me and everyone else. That's a great example. Thank you.
It was hard to come up with an example being on the webinar, but we were able to pull it out.
So hopefully our phone doesn't disconnect us again. So normal anxiety, usually the severity is time limited. Typically people aren't experiencing panic attacks during that. It's usually appropriate to whatever the triggering event is. And so if I have a report that's due, I might be stressed for a few days while I prepare for that, but I know that it's going to dissipate and that I can, overcome whatever it is. It's worrying about things that would typically produce anxiety, like, preparing for a test, preparing for a presentation or a report that has to be turned in. And then there's a sense that even during intense periods of anxiety, that it is manageable and that it has an end. So it's not to say that we don't experience normal anxiety in an intense way, but generally we can kind of see a light at the end of the tunnel when it's not of a clinical nature.
So generalized anxiety disorder is when your normal everyday anxiety kind of spills over and is creating more problems for you than it would on an ordinary basis. It's longer lasting, and people usually describe it as their heart racing or feeling like an animal's elephants on their chest. It can include sweating, really feelings of nervousness. People also describe it as kind of like being afraid or fearful on the edge of your seat. And usually that happens, those feelings happen when something has not triggered it. Or, like this says, disproportionate reactions to the anxiety-producing event. So, for example, I used to be on call all the time with crisis. I started getting anxiety when my phone would create this normal ding. Even when I wasn't on call, if it was a ding that reminded me of it, it created more anxiety than was probably necessary. So that's just an example of how it can spill over into maybe not in the disorder, but not where it's normal anxiety. Feelings of anxiety are related to most events most of the time. So the anxiety doesn't just come and go with what we're normally doing or with the project or something that's going on in our lives, like maybe your kid comes home with a bad grade, or you're homeschooling your kid right now with trying to work. That causes a lot of anxiety. That's normal anxiety. But the generalized anxiety disorder is that anxiety is still there when those things are not going on. And so you do have this feeling that you're not able to control your anxiety. And when the event has ended, the anxiety is still there, and you don't feel like you're able to calm yourself down and bring yourself out of the spot that you were at when you're experiencing all the anxiety.
So some specific things that we wanted to talk about. Let's see. Okay. Some COVID-19 and maybe even quarantine-specific stressors, although hopefully as things continue to change, quarantine will be less applicable, although we'll still probably be seeing changes with all the COVID-19 things happening. I've listened to a few different podcasts and some different research, and there's a prevailing theme that right now what we're experiencing looks a lot like grief, like almost as if we've lost someone close to us, but even though we may not have specifically lost a family member, many people are grieving a few things related to COVID-19, like the loss of normalcy, you know.
People love routine. So when we talk about loss of normalcy, the routine is huge for people. So everybody, I mean, how many of y'all sleep on the same side of the bed every night, or go and sit down at the same chair at dinner time, or, you know, you watch a certain TV show on a certain day. So people are used to getting up, going to work, doing things like normal. Well, now we don't really have a normal. What is normal? You know, we can't go to the grocery store the same way we did. We can't go get our nails done like we did. Although I'm sure not all y'all get your nails done, but I don't know. I can't see any of y'all. Or we can't go and go to the gym like we did. There's just a lot of things. We can't even take our kids to daycare or take them to school. There's just a lot of things that we're having to change, not just in relation to the COVID-19, but just our lives aren't normal and don't have the routine, so we're out of our comfort zone.
A lot of what we're doing here, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are experiencing this as well, is our staff, even ourselves, we're using a lot of different methods and tools for work, which while it's wonderful that we have that opportunity, it certainly has presented some stresses, both for our staff providing the care, and you'll see in here as well, even clientele that we're serving, while many of them are appreciative that we can still provide services, it's a big adjustment to doing telephone services or televideo services when they were used to coming in person or having someone come visit them at their home.
You know, we thought we were really technologically advanced, but you realize when you really have to put your technology to test that you're maybe not as advanced, or maybe technology isn't as awesome as we all thought it was. Because, I mean, even earlier this week, our electronic medical record went down and we weren't able to access it remotely. You know, some people's jetpacks aren't working, which is our remote Wi-Fi. So just you start coming into all these contacts with people working from home, but then all these connectivity issues. And here at the office, we have use of PPE and physical barriers. I'm sure a lot of you are having used that at your workplaces, the 6 feet, putting tape down, making sure we're taking people's temperatures, making people wear masks even if they might not want to. And then, you know, a lot of us have screens up, and you see the screens are up. We're using screens here. They're using them at McDonald's. There's more screen protectors put up at Walmart. I mean, so just any business you go to, it physically is different. You're not able to hug people. I mean, even I did an interview this morning, not able to shake people's hands. It's very strange.
For a lot of people too, you know, Community Healthcore, we've been fortunate that many of our staff are considered essential, even though their job roles may have changed. But I know many of us, myself included, have had family and friends who have been laid off or furloughed, so there's a lot of economic uncertainty. And even for those, you know, that are continuing to work, getting ready to go back to work, there's a lot of anxiety related to what their job might look like moving forward. You know, is this temporary? Is this permanent? I think another big thing is, unless people are being extremely proactive, even just the loss of connection, of connecting with coworkers in an environment at the office, or connection with family and friends outside of the office. Certainly we have things like Zoom and things like this that are a wonderful tool, but it can certainly take away from our sense of connection to others. And then the only other one to mention specifically on here is loss of the feeling of safety. I think this varies depending on the field, but even despite the barriers and PPE being used, there are certainly a lot of people that have great concern about, is it safe to go to the store? Is it safe to go to work? And so, you know, these are stressors that may have existed previously, but could be even more intense now. So some other things that cause workplace stress. I don't know if any of y'all have been a part of these meetings that the comic is mentioning on the side. It says the agenda is to try to figure out why we're having this meeting.
Or or the meme like this meeting could have been an email.
Right.
So these workplace stressors are not necessarily COVID related, but just general everyday conflicts that we have at work. Some of those are excessive job demands. And there's a comment too about if you're good at your job, you're going to get punished by doing, I don't know what it is, but you're going to get punished by getting extra job duties, basically, which seems to happen sometimes. And some of your employees, unfortunately, I will do that to my employees sometimes, not purposefully, but if you have a really good employee, that's who you're going to want to hand stuff off to. And we have to be aware of that as managers, but also aware when we get handed too much as well.
A lot of challenges can exist with conflicts between coworkers and managers. If there's an individual or a group that is difficult to get along with at work, or if you feel like you may be at odds with your supervisor or an employee, that can certainly be stressful if there's not effective communication there.
Can I tell them about my stressor with you?
Sure.
So he moved into the office area a few months ago. Shawn and I have known each other for years, but I never knew his typing was so loud, and he's also a drummer, side note, and it's rhythmic. And so that was one of my stressors. But, back to what Shawn said about the communication, we talked about it, and Shawn attempted to type quieter, and I also got over it. It's not that big a deal in the meantime. But the communication is huge, and that's one of the reasons we have an ineffective communication on there. Because a lot of what I've noticed in our workplace, too, is that you can get some passive-aggressive behavior going on if you don't have that communication and you don't feel like you can go to your coworkers or your supervisor and let them know, hey, this isn't working, or hey, this is bothering me, or hey, and it's probably honestly something bigger than typing. I know that's minute and seems petty. But, when you have an issue with a coworker and they're not doing something, or they are doing something that's causing an issue in the workplace, it's important that even if you can't communicate with your coworkers, you've got to at least be able to communicate with your supervisor.
We talked about it already a little bit, unproductive meetings. I will say maybe one potential benefit of all this wildness going on is I have seen our meetings go down, and they are significantly briefer. And so, and I think another thing that's happening a lot right now too is frequent job duty changes. Sometimes this is avoidable and sometimes it's not. I know our staff, especially our caseworkers that are providing direct care, have seen a significant change in not necessarily their job duties, but the way that they're providing it. And I've been very impressed with our team. Many of y'all may as well with your teams, the resiliency and even the leadership that we've seen come out of all these changes that have been needed. Talk about insufficient training or equipment. A lot of the stuff we've been doing lately it's fairly new. We have changes that are occurring daily, different codes that people are having to use, different ways of providing care, and we're finding, kind of like Rachel mentioned earlier, we have a lot of equipment, but most of it, or a lot of it, may not have been sufficient to really provide services from home or primarily over telehealth, and so a lot of times it's catching up there.
And I know if y'all have IT, they are just overloaded. Our IT has had to set up special helplines and special numbers that we can call because we are really having to lean on IT right now. And the last thing is environment can cause stress. I've gotten a lot of, I wouldn't say complaints, but one of the things people miss is actually coming into the job and having the interactions with the coworkers, or getting outside and being able to see the sun or drive around. One person mentioned she hadn't filled her car up in like 3 weeks. So, being stuck at home right now, or not getting out and getting about, that's one of the things we even talk to our clients here about, when we do counseling, is that you have to get out and about and socialize with people. And, right now that's really not an option, but that's one of the things that's causing stress.
I attempted to work from home for the first time yesterday. With my position, I've been in office most of the time. My wife had a meeting, and so I went home and watched our 3 small children, and I found how ineffective my environment was working from home. So that was eye-opening.
Half of my conversation with Shawn was a baby babbling in the background. So
as we were putting the final touches on this presentation. So yes. So some ways of identifying stress in the workplace. I know with our staff, with our teams, we really try to be intentional about soliciting feedback, because what we found is that unless we're asking the questions, a lot of times people aren't going to volunteer the information.
And that's a good point. We have coaching logs that we do, and we've tried to make these coaching logs routine and regular so that they're not a punitive log, but just kind of a check-in. Are you doing your job? Are you meeting your requirements? Yes. But also, what is your stress level on a scale of 1 to 10? And what is your job satisfaction level on a scale of 1 to 10? And what can we do to make that better or to help decrease your stress? Because that kind of buy-in with your employees is going to really help you, help them, maybe bring them to want to be more productive and to really think, hey, my company cares about me, you know. And you got to be careful, because we don't want to be buddies, you know, super best friends with all of our employees necessarily. But we want to let them know that, yes, we need them as much as they need us.
And it mentions here some common signs of stress: irritability, fatigue, nausea, difficulty sleeping. What I try to do is, if it's more difficult now because we're all remote, but if I'm even identifying or observing these things with my staff, you know, I'll try to be proactive and go to them and say, hey, you know, I can tell things look like they've been a little more challenging lately. Can you tell me what's going on? You know, just to make sure that if there is something work-related, or if there's something related personally, that I'm, you know, advocating that they get the help that they need, you know, and so that they can be productive, they can be doing well, both at the job and at home. So be aware of these signs of stress in not just in your staff, but in yourself as well.
One of the things we stress is that you need to take a vacation. Also, people have found that the more you encourage your staff to take planned vacations, the less random call-ins are going to be. Nobody, you know, especially if we have a prescriber or a caseworker, if they call in, that disrupts a lot of people's schedules. And I'm sure you and your businesses and your employees, if you have call-ins or people that are sick all the time, we all have those employees, it really disrupts everybody else. So if you encourage them to take regular vacations and really buy into their own self-care, then that's really going to decrease that. But signs of workplace stress, decreased performance, loss of purpose, and constantly tired. And I would say it's the call-ins regularly too.
So kind of jumping on to some solutions that we can do as managers, both for ourselves and for the teams that we work with. We don't always know terribly well, especially depending on the size of our team, how each person is doing. And so one thing that I know I try to practice is just trying to really be mindful of the way that I interact with my staff. Not that we don't hold them to account or have expectations, but recognizing that I may not know what it's like outside of their 8 to 5 at the office. I don't know what impact, especially the COVID-19 pandemic, is having on their day-to-day living. And so just being mindful about how I interact, being gracious about what they may be experiencing at home, all the while making sure that they have what they need from me to do their jobs, and that they're continuing to be productive in that way as much as possible. Encouraging self-care. We've touched on this a little bit. For staff, for companies that have PTO, making sure that they're using that paid time off to refuel, to do the self-care. One thing Community Healthcore has here, which I know other companies do as well, is called our EAP, or Employee Assistance Program, that offers free counseling services to any employee. I think it's up to about 5 sessions annually. And so I know for my staff, I will continue to put that in front of them as an option to use as needed. And so if companies have something similar to that, just encouraging staff to take care of those things or take advantage of those things.
We found that's kind of a touchy subject to approach. So even if you wanted to send out an email, just, hey guys, this is an advantage that our company offers, is the Employee Assistance Program for counseling, so that you don't have to single people out, because that can be awkward. Being transparent about changes is really important. For instance, we have to deal with a lot of Medicaid organizations, and we have to deal with a lot of state regulations. So even me telling my team, hey, Medicaid has approved us to be able to do telephone and televideo services through the end of May, or possibly going back in office in June, that could change. So I'm not telling them anything concrete, but as much information as I can push down to my team as possible is good. I don't want to confuse anybody, but just as I find out information, if I can pass it on, then it really makes them feel important and empowered and in the loop on things. And, you know, because nobody likes to be hit with a change and not know what's going on, or be like, hey, I didn't know about this, you know, because that can lead to more stress and more anger. And then validating the new challenge that presents themselves. Why are we doing it? You know, a lot of people ask why. Well, I said so. I'm the boss. We don't want to take that perspective necessarily, just because I know personally when my boss says, hey, Rachel, I need you to do X, Y, Z. Okay, why are we doing this? If I get an explanation, I'm more likely to be invested in the change and why we're doing it. I may not like it, but it's something that I'm going to do. So, you know, not promoting insubordinates or anything, but just as much as you can buy into your staff and let them know why you're doing what we're doing and why we have to change, really helps validate them and make them buy into the change.
And as far as managers as well, I think it can be dangerous sometimes that we might focus so much on all the things that we have to take care of, focus on all the needs that staff and customers or clients may present, that it can be easy to forget about practicing our own effective self-care. So all of the same things we mentioned above for ways to encourage your staff to reduce stress, make sure that we're doing those things for ourselves as well. I know I'm fortunate to have peers around me that I can trust, that I can process challenges with, especially if I'm struggling to understand where we're going with this, or just the stress of all the changes. That's not necessarily something I want to talk to my team about, but I could talk to other managers, other peers, and process through some of those things. And kind of like I mentioned earlier, just being gracious, being generous with yourself as far as how we are processing through this unique time, knowing that with the constant changes, things may not be as perfect or as structured as we would like, but knowing that we're just going to continue doing as much as we can, the best we can, through all these constant changes. So some helpful and unhelpful ways of dealing with stress. Some of these I may be guilty of, the unhelpful ones, watching endless hours of TV.
Or playing endless hours of video games.
I know that Netflix will judge me often and ask if I'm still watching.
Really none of their business, but yeah.
They should remove that feature during this period. But no, just, you know, some of these things, of course, in moderation are helpful, but they're saying, you know, make sure we're not totally escaping by watching TV all the time. Being proactive in interacting with others, even if it is in a digital format versus face-to-face. Being mindful of our diet, not oversleeping.
Would you called it the quarantine 15?
The quarantine 15. Yeah, I think that's a real thing. You know, eating our feelings is certainly tempting at times.
Or if you're at home, yeah, you have chips or snacks or whatever handy, you're more likely, you know, but that can cause added stress.
And if you're working at home and don't have to wear real pants for a while, you know, you may not know until it's time to go back to work. But lashing out, I don't think anyone lashes out with the intention of relieving stress, but certainly that can happen more when we're under stress. And then I think the big one to point out here, and this is something I've observed with my team who are working from home, is unhealthy work boundaries. And so making sure that there are dedicated times that, okay, even though my computer is here on the dinner table, I'm not going to open it up after 5 o'clock, and I'm not going to take calls before 8. So we're maintaining some type of schedule. And just because we have access at home doesn't mean that we are working 24/7.
Yeah, and a lot of people suggest that you have a separate office area so that you don't have to be in that same area if you're working from home, which doesn't always happen. But regardless of the COVID-19 or not, the work boundaries is really important. And I just stressed my team even yesterday. Your phone goes off at 5. Your phone turns on at 8. Don't differ from that, because we don't need the stress of work coming with us from home. There needs to be clear boundaries between the two. And we did put on here drinking too much alcohol or taking drugs or taking up smoking or smoke. I mean, I've seen a lot of that here. You know, there's that joke about the quarantini going around with the emergency and the martini, which is funny. That's not to say you can't have a glass of red wine at dinner. But if you're using it to deal with stress, or you start using things as a means to handle stress or to unhealthily indulge in, that's when you really gotta work out or start looking out. Some of the helpful ways, maintaining a schedule. We talked about routine and how important routine is to us. Eating healthy, getting exercise. I've seen a lot more people. I regularly go to parks and we go fishing and stuff, but I've seen a lot more people get out and do things. I was at the academy this past weekend, and I would say 50% and 75% of their fishing poles were sold out. You know, people are getting out and actually doing things, which is a benefit to this time right now. And getting plenty of sleep. People underestimate sleep. You got to hit the sweet spot. You don't want to get too much, but you definitely don't want to get too little either. Sleeping is as, if not more important than eating. It resets our brain. Allows our brain time to process things. So, you know, with our clients, with our peers, everybody, sleep is so important.
One big thing I've been intentional about, and I've probably encouraged my family with this more than my staff, but taking a break from media. I have family that will have any given news station on 24/7, and I don't know that it's terribly helpful. And where I pulled some of this information, I believe, is from one of the Harvard business studies that encourages people to, you know, take a break from media, learn what you need to know that's pertinent to your life, to your job, and then take a break from it. My experience has been the majority of the news channels will run the same information about 24 times a day, and it's not terribly helpful for me to know that much information, and probably just create more anxiety. For those who have hobbies, I know Rachel kind of touched on this, but, you know, fishing or anything else, so scheduling time to do things that build you up, scheduling times that for things that are enjoyable for us. I think often as employees or supervisors, parents, whatever our role is, we can trick ourselves into thinking that we don't have time to do things that we enjoy. But truly, if we are not taking time to improve ourselves, to sharpen ourselves, we're not going to be nearly as effective as we could, you know, if we're practicing those type of things. And then we've touched on this a little bit, but making sure to connect with others, family, parents, spiritual leaders, friends, and then, you know, even counselors as needed to kind of process through a lot of this stuff that we're going through.
We should have probably put Google under Unhelpful.
Yes.
I had a client that was YouTubing different things about COVID-19. I was like, stop! What are you doing?
Right. WebMD diagnosing.
Yes, we can find anything bad on the internet right now, or anytime really.
So how to motivate our teams, kind of in the same vein. A lot of the traditional things we did may not exist currently, and we may see them change even after all of this. And so there was a great article by Claude Werder. He identified 5 main areas of things that we can do to kind of motivate our team during this time, and most of these would even be applicable even after we were back to some level of normalcy. I'll delay here. Okay. So here's the 5 areas, and we'll kind of talk through a little bit of each of these. So creating a sense of belonging for our teams. On the article, it said, you know, communicate. I think with our center, we have been communicating to our direct teams. Our HR department has been putting things on our E3 system, which is where we do our timesheets and everything, so people see those updates daily. We've been sending out center-wide emails. We've had people have access to our executive director to send him emails. We've even attempted, although technology interfered, to do center-wide calls to try to answer and communicate information. So it's almost like when you think it's enough, just do a little bit more so that people know, as best we can really what's going on. Soliciting ideas. So for us, I think a lot of the best ideas and the best feedback we get is that from our staff that are on the front lines, that we as managers and maybe even above us as the executive management, we're passing down these ideas, these new procedures, but it's the staff that are actually implementing this on the front line that can give us feedback about what's actually working and what isn't.
And we're doing these team calls right now. We use something called Blue Teams, which is a lot like Zoom, where everybody can see everybody. And that's really where our caseworkers and everybody gets on. And that's really where we don't have an agenda so much for the meeting. You know, I may throw a couple things out there, but a couple of, you know, that's where people really bounce ideas back off. What's working for them, what's not working for them, and what's going on there. We also, I have during my Blue Jeans meeting, we have everybody, if they're working from home, show their pets. That's been really fun to do. Or if they have a baby, they put their baby in the camera. So just kind of some innovative, fun things during this time, or just in general. You know, usually at our team meetings that Shawn and I conduct, we usually try to have some kind of icebreaker or fun game at the beginning and try to break up meetings with some fun, active things so it's not just droning on and on.
Yeah, and then enabling teamwork and collaboration. So like we mentioned before, inviting that feedback, soliciting that feedback from our staff about what's going on. And then even having, you know, coworkers work together to collaborate with one another. One thing I love about my team is I have some more tenured workers, and they're able to, you know, provide some tips and information to some of our newer staff. It's a great way of building a team. Recognizing and rewarding good work, especially during this time, I think that's so relevant because we have people doing stuff that they may have never done before. And so I've seen opportunities for my team to do things that maybe they never tried before, but they've been very effective. And as much as I can, I really try to highlight to them and then to others, like, hey, this is good stuff. Let's share this with other parts of our center to make sure we can pass this kind of stuff on. So,
as much as possible, give employees the freedom and authority to make decisions. For the most part, our people know what they're doing. You know, obviously provide guidance when it's needed. But one of the first things, well, Rachel, what do I do? Well, what do you want to do? You know, if they know, I mean, I'll put my input in there, and if they need guidance, then I'll certainly provide it. But it's good to give them that autonomy and put that in their hands because that promotes their well-being, and it really gives them a sense of, hey, I know what I'm doing, and my leader trusts me.
Yeah. And even with, you know, showing them that their work is meaningful. I know during our meetings, I've had certain staff, they've had an especially effective session with somebody, or we're able to assist someone in a certain way, to share that with the team, because there's a lot of unpleasant things happening right now. And it's such a good reminder to know that we're still making an impact on our community through our center, but really any business probably has a story of success they can share. And then even just small rewards. I'll sometimes, you know, give out a $5 gift card, or my administrative staff was hugely helpful the other day, and just buying her breakfast or something like that. I have a stack of little thank you cards in my desk that, you know, my handwriting is atrocious, but I will often write my team or somebody else just a quick thank you card just saying, I noticed what you did. I really appreciated it.
And mainly smiley faces so they can read it.
and as small of a gesture as that is, I've gone into their offices or their workplaces, and I've seen them pinned to the wall or sitting on their desk after months. And not that I said anything terribly profound, but I think that it's just meaningful to get something like that from a supervisor or a team member.
And one of the things that we did as a team building exercise is we shared their stories, and this could be done not just with counseling, but with any business. What have you done to help somebody, and what has somebody here helped you with? And so really showing how not just the employee is buying in, but how their coworkers are buying into the job too.
The last thing we'll talk about, and then we'll open it up for some questions and answers, is on the podcast I had mentioned earlier by Brene Brown. She had a guest on who was primarily talking about processing through grief and then also loneliness. Many of y'all may be familiar with the parable of the long spoons. This has been around for quite a while. And often in depictions, it will be portrayed as the difference between heaven and hell can be these two kind of dichotomous pictures that we're looking at. To explain the chaos happening in this first picture, there's, of course, a pot of soup food in the middle, and everyone has these long, not terribly working spoons available to them, and for a variety of reasons, they are unable to feed themselves, or they're making a giant mess of it. The point that they were talking about on this podcast, which I would encourage any of y'all to take a listen to, there's quite a few that are very relevant to what we're going through now, is that we won't be able to make it through this time if all we're trying to do is focus on ourselves and maintain and get through this alone. And so, as you can see here, maybe the pot in the middle is our satisfaction, our sanity to some extent that we're needing to obtain. But as all these people are attempting to do that on their own, they're obviously not being very successful. The second slide here, we are working with one another, and it's significantly more pleasant. Everyone is having their needs met. And so as far as the practical application of this, my encouragement to my team, and then what I've gotten out of this as well, is being present for those around us, allowing time, really prioritizing time with peers, with staff, with family and friends, to allow them time to process the challenges in their own life, what's going on, and then as appropriate for work, the challenges our teams are experiencing. And then also having people that will be present for us as well as we kind of process through some of these things. I don't know that if we are hunkered down on our own, doing our own thing, that we will be terribly successful in coming out of this better than we were, or very successfully at all. Well, I think that's everything.
3 minutes early.
So unless you have anything else, we can open it up to questions.
I'm just to remind you that supervisors, be open to receiving calls and touching base with your team. I think that's probably the thing that I struggle with. You may have a bunch of employees, but just even sending them a text, hey, how you doing? Just checking in with you. And on the flip side, if you're an employee, tell your supervisor. Don't be afraid to reach out to your supervisor. And hopefully everybody has a supervisor. And that doesn't always happen, but they're able to reach out to and talk to. Because like Shawn said, we're always, especially during this time, leaning on each other. And I don't know of any job that you really completely do on your own. So I guess with that, we'll throw it back to Dave.
All righty. Thank you. Great presentation. Great job presenting it. Thank you, guys. Couple of questions, and before we get to these, I want to remind everybody that if you have a question and you haven't asked it yet, you have time to go ahead and type that into the little questions section. First one is this: can you speak to the challenge of having people in your department or your organization, your business, your company, that are at different stages? Well, first of all, different stages of their stress level, and they're maybe processing grief through all of this, but also it relates to how they're handling or their perspective of the whole pandemic situation, right? People have very diverse opinions about all of this. Do you have some thoughts on how to handle the challenge of people being at different places and people processing all of this differently?
I can say for my team, people are at different places. I can think of a few team members that are extremely concerned about everything going on. And then even in recent weeks, as we began kind of the process of opening back up, concerns that it may be too soon. I've had staff on the other spectrum that have felt that this is blown out of proportion and that it's not terribly necessary that we're taking the precautions we are. As far as the way I've, addressed my team is there's certain things that center-wide we are required to do despite individual concerns or preferences, and communicating that there's certain things that we must do, but then on an individual basis, I try to make sure, especially for my staff that are maybe more on the spectrum of we're coming back too soon, there's too much going on, letting them know that to the extent we can have flexibility, that we're going to continue to allow them to work from home as long as we can, that even if some staff are coming back into the office because we're able to, that we recognize their concern. Maybe it's because of compromised health or age or things like that, that we want to continue to support their safety of both them and the people that we're serving.
I would say listen to the concerns of your employees too during this time, like Shawn was saying. And we have some with health compromised or older people at home. And, I think now more than ever, you have to treat employees on an individual basis and not just a blanket, this is our policy. Although we do have to enforce our policy, there has to be some flexibility during this time.
And I think one thing I've noticed as well is, even if I can't necessarily provide an immediate solution, I think when people have felt heard, that diminishes a lot of the anxiety and concerns. And kind of going back to some of the stuff we mentioned, just being transparent and saying, I totally get where you're coming from. This is hard. This is very difficult. I can see why you would be concerned about coming back in or about everything going on. And then saying, this is where we're at as a center and a team right now. We want to make sure we make the best safe decisions we can. But that's what I've found, is that actually connecting, actually listening, not just pretending, and hearing their concerns has been an effective way to reduce a lot of that stress.
Good stuff. Yeah, flexibility being key, understanding people are individuals and will respond differently. That's all great stuff. Respond, if you will, to this statement in relation to all of this and the stress of it all. Calm breeds calm and panic breeds panic.
I think that's very accurate. One thing that we have, what's called, we have these meetings 3 times a week, 15, 20 minutes with all the managers at the center. And one thing our executive management continues to put in front of all of us is we are the trend setters of sorts. We are the people that are going to influence the atmosphere at our company and at our teams, regardless of size. And so we aren't trying to be fake by any means, but we're trying to keep the vision in front of our teams of what's going on. And like I kind of mentioned earlier, if there is levels of concern or panic, that we are addressing those with our peers and not necessarily with those that are reporting to us.
Well, and it's just like there's a storm the other day. If I'm supposed to, what does Mark Skirto say? To a windowless interior room. I'm not going to go around my house and, oh my God, there's a tornado coming in, and get my kids all stirred up and put them in, me as a parent, I'm going to be like, okay, we need to get in here. Let's bring our iPads in here. Let's get the puppies in here. It'll be fun. We're going to stay here for a while. So even though, there's something chaotic going on, I, as a parent, have to kind of keep the sanity, address the situation, treat it with the seriousness it is, but not create more panic.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I've done a lot of leadership related things, studies and training, and that's a key point of leadership, is understanding that whoever you're leading, they're taking their cues from you. So if you come in a panic, they're going to feel like there's something to panic about. If you come in depressed or sad, they're going to feel like there's something to be sad or depressed about, and they will take their cues from you. So you've got to be very self-aware and mindful of how you're approaching things. So that's very helpful right there.
And one of our leaders, John Grubbs, he does some leadership trainings with us, and I think he's around here a lot. One of the things he says is that as a manager, you're basically on camera. Once you hit the building and you're out of your car, you're on. And so that kind of goes with what you're saying.
Yep. And we know John well. He does a lot for us for Leadership Longview, so we appreciate him. One other question so far, unless any others come in. You guys mentioned an employee assistance plan related to mental health. And I'm wondering, especially for businesses that maybe or smaller, less than 50 employees, less than 20 employees, what's the importance of them having some type of plan? And is that something that you guys at Community Healthcore can assist a small business with developing and having a plan?
I think as far as ours, and this might be verging more into the HR world, but our employee assistance plan is through a company called Magellan. I'm not entirely sure what the cost associated with our center enrolling in that would be. But if that's something that anyone is interested in using that, I'm sure we could get y'all connected with one of our HR representatives that could speak more knowledgeably to that.
And we could also provide some local resources.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, we have to have certain diagnoses. We treat the more severely mentally ill here at Community Healthcore, but we also have resources and referrals in the community where you can seek, even if your business can't personally purchase the employee assistance program, we have local businesses like Sarah Krantz does some counseling for a smaller fee, or we have like Pastones. We can send out referrals where you can go to counseling on a sliding fee scale. So make it more affordable for your employees and not have to pay $100 an hour.
Yeah, Pastones, I think Samaritan here in Longview as well.
So we can send those out.
They do a sliding scale fee, especially like you mentioned for smaller businesses that maybe benefits, things like that aren't always immediately available.
Yeah, and in our community, while we might not have all of the resources we need or enough of the resources we need, we do have some great resources out there for folks. And so I wanted to mention for anybody, I want to say that you guys at the beginning differentiated between stress and anxiety and then generalized anxiety disorder. And I'm glad you made that distinction, because there may be some folks who find themselves really at a place where the anxiety is so high for them right now that they're at a point of feeling like they need help, and there is help out there. And I'll let you guys speak to that first if you want to point people in any particular direction on that.
Yeah, I think that one slide, of course, is a very broad overview, but it could be used as a guidepost, certainly. If there's someone on the call, or even if they know of a staff that may be experiencing those things, it can be tricky, as Rachel mentioned, to address that, but even providing resources to a whole team, especially during this time, I think that would be applicable, and saying, here's some local resources in Longview. If y'all are having a hard time processing through this, so you're not singling out a person, there's places like Pastone, Samaritan, or if you have insurance, we encourage you, reach out to a local counselor and see if that might be helpful. Because when you start checking all those boxes on that generalized anxiety disorder side of things, that can be when it's like, okay, maybe this is beyond talking to my family and friends. Maybe this is time to really look into getting some professional assistance in this area.
Okay, good. And since we've been talking a little bit, we've gotten a couple of comments and questions from others as well. We have one reminder that the statewide number for mental health support is 833-986-1919. And then for local referrals, you can always dial 211 to find out about help that is out there. And then we have a question. Are there any indicators, mental or physical, to watch out for during calls with team members? So you're having a conference call or a video call with your team members. Are there any signs that an employee, a supervisor or manager might pick up on and get an idea that maybe there's an issue?
I actually had this happen the other day. I was telling, this is kind of a wah-wah, but we were showing our pets, and I had a team member who just lost her pet. No way of me knowing. But some of the things that I noticed, and I just texted her while we were doing it, is she would look away from the camera, or she would look down, or, a lot of silence, not making eye contact, not participating as normal, kind of isolating from the group. There's only so much you can participate on a web call, but especially I would look out for those visual cues, and then either text or, not address it in the session, but text to the side, hey, I noticed you're being quiet, what's going on? So I would look out for that. excessive quietness, looking away from the camera, looking down, maybe not participating, not responding either to you as a supervisor or to your fellow employees. Shawn, have you noticed anything?
Yeah, it is hard to pick up on some of those cues, and Rachel and I are both counselors, and so for me at least, I always have to be mindful of making sure I'm not wearing my counselor hat too much. I certainly want to be able to identify things as a supervisor and check in on how my team is doing to promote morale and their own health. But yeah, just generally withdrawn, especially if it's someone's personality that normally they would be very engaged and very interactive on a call or in a meeting. If that appears to be very different, that might be something to be mindful of, and check in a little bit more, dig a little deeper with that individual.
Super. All right. Well, I think that is all the questions we had. So, Shawn and Rachel, thank you for taking time today from your schedule to help us think through some solutions to this issue of stress in the workplace, especially during this time that we're dealing with. I'll also mention one of our chamber partners is Hope Road Counseling here in town, and I know that they are offering a free session, counseling session to anybody who may have a need of that. I'm sure others are doing similar things, but I know that they are. So if anybody needs that resource. Again, Rachel and Shawn, thank you. And we want to remind everyone that one of the roles that your chamber plays is to help create an economic environment that allows prosperity to occur. And that means taking care of our employees, right? So that's one of the important reasons for doing a webinar like this one. We know together we'll be stronger, and we're going to come through this difficult time stronger than ever before. And so again, on behalf of the Longview Chamber of Commerce, we appreciate your participation in this webinar today. And as a reminder, it is being recorded. It'll be posted on our website, longviewchamber.com. And again, for those who have been on this live, you'll receive an email later today with the link to listen to it again or to share with others. So again, thank you for participating. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.